Joe Browne joining us here on the program. Thanks for joining me today, Joe.
Yeah, good day, Rich. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I will give you the floor on Ed Sabol and what he meant to the National Football League, Joe.
Well, Big Ed was not exactly a 9-to-5 guy. He really was bigger than life. I understand why he wasn't particularly happy in his father-in-law's rag business, which is what he did until he was age 40. He was a creative guy like you, Rich. But there was a party, an event down at NFL Films in the 90s, and I don't remember whether it was Ed's going away, the formal transition from Ed to Steve Sabol, but there was a dais. It was all A type material. It was myself, Michael Buffer. Let's get ready to rumble.
Yeah.
Paul Horning was there. Don't ask me why, but it turned into a roast. And as you know, Rich, I don't look that old, but I started working when I was in college in 1965 at the NFL office, and there were 11 people. There were 11 people full time working then, including Pete Rozelle and the receptionist, and I used to always tell Pete later that she was a heck of a lot better looking than he was. But Ed sold his company, Blair Motion Pictures. Ed sold his company to the league, and it was renamed NFL Films in April of '65. Well, I started in February of '65. So at this party / roast, I told the story about how I remember the first time I met Ed Sabol. He was sitting in our little lobby with his at the NFL office at 1 Rockefeller Plaza with his yellow canister 16mm film, and he was going in to see Rozelle about selling the company to the league. And when it was finished, I said goodbye. Steve was downstairs waiting in the car, so they didn't have to pay the meter. And I told the story that Pete called me into the office. Now, remember, I was 18 years old. He called me into the office. He said, well, what do you think about this? Do you think this is something we should do? And I said, well, I don't know. He did a pretty good job with the '62 championship game, the first game that he shot up at Yankee Stadium. I said, maybe we should give the young guy a chance. And we went from there. And he used to always give it back to me because, again, when he first met me, I was working part-time, and I was clipping out the newspaper stories out of all the papers we got around the country on Gale Sayers and Paul Warfield and all the great players at the time. And he used to always call me, oh, yeah, Joe Browne, the kid with the scissors. That was his retort to me. But Big Ed, as I say, he really was bigger than life. He created something at NFL Films with the help of Pete Rozelle and Art Modell, who was the chairman of the Films Committee for quite a while. But I used to say all through the 60s and 70s, when my voice started to matter, that between NFL Films and the fact that we televised all our games over free over-the-air television, we don't need any marketing department in this office. And I've heard back from many of the people who have served that role or in that department over the years. So we didn't need any marketing department. We had NFL Films during the off season, and we had the live games on free television during the season. And I think there's a lot of truth to that films was our own marketing department.
Interesting.
They were always so positive, Rich. It was always so positive in the way they presented the games and made the games into something more than just 60-minute events. Yeah,
Joe Browne, longtime NFL executive, joining me now. So how were the first few years, though, between Commissioner Rozelle and Ed Sabol? How did those go? Were there any rocky times where you thought this might not work out with the guy who sold his dad's rag company?
Again, remember, I was in college, so I wasn't exactly in all the high-level meetings.
Right.
But I do remember when Ed and Steve was gaining footage in the company.
Yes.
But Big Ed, he presented something to us I remember Val Pinchbeck, God bless him, who was there at the time. Don Weiss, all of my mentors in the '70s. But he presented something he showed in the film room, and it was the working title was NFL Follies. NFL Follies. All right, let's see it. And as we all of us football fans know, NFL Follies. But the first time that us stiff-collared, white-collared, dark jacket guys on Park Avenue saw that, we said, "Well, wait a second. We can't air those bloopers. No, we can't add those bloopers. We spend all of our time in the league office building up and promoting the players. You're making a fool of them. You're making a fool of them." So Pete wasn't in the meeting at the time. So Ed got upset. We got upset. Well, that's true, Ed. We can't show that. So we had such a sense of humor in those days.
Yeah.
And so Ed came back the following week, and we had another meeting. This time Pete was in the meeting, Rozelle. And he looked at it, and I don't know whether Ed lobbied him in advance or it was just Pete's good judgment. But Pete said, "Let's give it a try. Let's give it a try. Let them air it on whatever syndicated show NFL Films had at the time." And of course, it took off, and it's one of the classic aspects of NFL Films. I heard you asking the fellow from Connecticut, well, what part of NFL Films sticks out to you? Well, NFL Follies. That put a stamp on NFL Films and on the National Football League that hadn't been there before. And of course, I deal now with a lot of the retired players and have for several years, and I've never met one guy who objected to the way they were presented in those NFL Follies.
Yeah, Joe Browne, longtime NFL executive, joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. What do you think about, though, with Ed Sabol and the trust level that he gained with coaches, from your perspective, Joe, that you saw his relationship grow over the years through the '70s and '80s?
Yeah, well, that wasn't something you would accomplish over the phone. There were a lot of 19th hole conversations that led to that. I mean, that was part of Ed's resume, was playing golf with the coaches, playing golf with the owners, because, as you say, that in the beginning, Ed was an outsider. He's this guy from Philadelphia who, he had done a good job, as I said earlier, on the championship game films, but now he's going to come in and become part of our NFL family. Now, let's slow down. Let's not go too fast here. And so Ed, and later Steve had to develop that trust, earn that trust, and they had to work at it. But I think when we heard Lombardi on the Ice Bowl game being mic'd, and then 2 years later we heard Hank Stram, which of course in my mind was there a turning point for NFL Films. I'd have to say it was the Super Bowl IV, and Hank Stram and matriculating down the field. And talking to Tom Keller, the referee, about being out on the field, I think that was the turning point. But there wasn't, the trust had to be earned, and they did such a good job of doing that. And I think part of it, Rich, was that the coaches and the owners, certainly Pete Rozelle, saw the emotional attachment that the Sabols had to the sport. And as you know, in any business, you have, and God knows, Rich, I'm not condemning anyone,
sure,
but you have lawyers and accountants and auditors who work in a job, even in our office, who aren't necessarily big football fans. It's a job to them. But Ed was one of those who you always sensed that the NFL was a heck of a lot more than a job, that it was an emotional attachment to the NFL and to the sport. And I think that's something that certainly was in Steve's DNA, but in the DNA of all the NFL Films employees right to this day.
Yeah.
That these people, the producers, the editors, the sound people, the administrative assistants, it's more than a job. It's more than a job. It's a love of the NFL and a love of the sport of football, and it started with Ed Sabol.
Joe, thanks for giving the perspective that you have and taking the time on a day like today. Appreciate it.
All right, Rich. Good speaking to you.
Yeah, same to you. That's Joe Browne, a longtime NFL executive.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.